Hello, everyone, and welcome to the debrief on ABC News Live. I'm Kimberly Brooks. Thanks so much for joining us. We're updating you on the latest in Venezuela after the opposition tried to oust Nicolás Maduro this week. Plus, a massive cyclone is pummeling the east coast of India, and two friends who were washed out to sea were saved by grace, if you will. But first, here are your headlines.
American employers added 263,000 jobs last month, a bit above the average monthly gain over the past year. The unemployment rate dropped to 3.6%. That's the lowest in 5 decades. The decline was mainly because people left the labor force. There were job gains in professional and business services, construction, and healthcare. Average hourly wages rose by 6 cents to $27.77 an hour. The report appears to bolster the decision of the Federal Reserve to leave interest rates unchanged.
Facebook is closing its doors to some controversial accounts.
Facebook blacklisting several right-wing extremists from its social network, as well as Instagram, including Alex Jones and his conspiracy theory website InfoWars, and other far right-wing personalities.
Nation of Islam leader Louis Farrakhan is also being banned.
Hollywood and Star Wars fans in mourning. The man behind one of the most beloved characters in movie history has died. Peter Mayhew, the original actor who played Chewbacca, passed away on Thursday. In tributes pouring in, Star Wars creator George Lucas says he was the closest thing any human being could be to a Wookiee. Big heart, gentle nature, and I learned to always let him win. And Mayhew's co-star, Harrison Ford, adding, "We were partners in film and friends in life for over 30 years, and I loved him." Mayhew died at his home in Texas, surrounded by family. He was 74 years old.
We begin with Washington, the White House and Congress clashing over this Mueller report, this investigation. So I want to bring in Mona Kosar Abdi at the White House. Mona, tensions are definitely rising after this hearing with Attorney General Barr. What do you make of all of this?
Kimberly, tensions are boiling over right now between the White House and congressional Democrats. Just to give you an idea of how much things escalated this week alone, we saw Senate Democrats grill the Attorney General over his handling of the Mueller report. Also, that newly released letter that Mueller sent the Attorney General back in March, where he explained his frustrations about how the Attorney General portrayed his report. Then we saw the House Judiciary Committee break into a sparring match in front of an empty chair after the Attorney General refused to show up to a hearing over a dispute over the questioning format. Then we saw the House Judiciary Chairman say that he's going to give the Attorney General one more chance to turn over the full unredacted Mueller report, comply with a subpoena that he issued, or he threatened to hold him in contempt of Congress. And now President Trump just yesterday told Fox News that he is telling Don McGahn not to testify, and he has vowed to ignore all congressional subpoenas. So just to give you an idea, just this week alone, all of that has happened. But it seems that Democrats are not willing to let it go. They want to see that full Mueller report and also hear from Mueller himself.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's talk about Nancy Pelosi. She's now accusing Barr of committing a crime and lying.
That's right. And she's not referring to the Senate hearing that happened this week. She's actually referring to a testimony that Barr gave back in April, where he was asked if Mueller or his team were frustrated or expressed any frustrations about how he portrayed the Mueller report. Obviously, with the revelation of that letter this week, Democrats were really pushing the Attorney General, saying that when he said he didn't know of any frustrations, that is what Nancy Pelosi is referring to when she says that the Attorney General lied to Congress by not explaining then that Mueller did in fact send him a letter dated March 27th, which was a few weeks before he testified before Congress, explaining that he was in fact frustrated.
Yeah, and you mentioned Mueller. Do you think that he will be in fact testifying soon?
Right now, we're hearing that the House Judiciary Committee is in conversation with the Mueller team to have him testify. Last week, the House Judiciary Chairman and the House Intel Chairman both sent official letters to request for Mueller's testimony. As of right now, I think the date that they're looking at is May 15th. In that letter, they said they wanted to hear from Mueller himself no later than May 23rd. But right now, nothing in the books. Of course, Kimberly, though, we will keep you updated.
All right, Mona, thank you so much for all of the updates and information. And guys, we move on to Venezuela. Despite the opposition leader Juan Guaido's seemingly failed attempt to oust Maduro, senior opposition leaders still remain opposed to the U.S. military intervening. So I want to go to Ian Panel, who's on the ground in Caracas with more. Ian?
Hey, good morning, Kimberly, from the Venezuelan capital, Caracas, which is once again waiting to see what happens next in this fast-developing crisis. We've seen both sides digging in their heels. Firstly, President Nicolas Maduro refusing to step aside. In fact, his message is one of defiance. He feels that he has beaten what he saw as a coup, appearing live on state TV with his own supporters, with key military personnel who are standing beside him, saying that he vows to arrest those responsible for trying to overthrow him. Meanwhile, the leader of the opposition, Juan Guaido, who we saw mobbed, surrounded by tens of thousands of supporters earlier this week, now nowhere to be seen, but issuing a message on Twitter calling for more protests around military encampments, including its airbase right behind me in central Caracas tomorrow. Meanwhile, we are seeing the U.S. administration throwing its full weight of support behind the opposition. People have been out onto the streets for months now, in fact years in some cases. What they're calling for is freedom and liberty, economic opportunities. This is a country that has suffered from deprivations for years now. People are literally starving in parts of Venezuela. Thousands, millions of people have actually left the country in search of a better life, fleeing across the border into Brazil, into Colombia. So we now have this crisis. It has been developing this week and getting worse, but neither side prepared to give way. We have to see what protests emerge in the next 24 hours. We have to see what the American administration does next. But amid all the protests, all the talk, all the threats, including from the US administration, which says all options are on the table, the suffering of the Venezuelan people goes on. Kim?
Thank you, Ian. Yes, definitely watching to see how all of that plays out. And now to another story that's making headlines overseas. There's a massive cyclone with winds up to 150 miles per hour. It's slamming into India's east coast right now, and the storm is equivalent to a Category 5 hurricane. It is the most powerful cyclone to hit the Indian coast in decades. Tens of millions of people are in its path, and the effects are being felt as far away as Mount Everest. So thankfully right now, there are no reports of any deaths. That's devastating, but with that, I want to go to forecast for this country and see what's going on with Ginger Z. Ginger?
Kimberly, thank you. Let's go ahead and start with what's to come and what has just happened. You need to see these images if you haven't yet out of Davenport, Iowa. So the Mississippi River there has now reached its highest point on record, even higher than the Great Flood of 1993. So the town flooded, the damage will be immense, and that's just from spring snowmelt, a levee breach, and yes, a little bit of extra rain. But there are flood alerts and also severe storms in the forecast for the weekend. So let's talk about it. Little Rock, Arkansas shows you a roof removed, a semi flipped. It takes some 60+ mile-per-hour winds, and I think we could see that again today. We could also see a considerable amount of lightning with these storms. Just like Wichita Falls, Texas, that's actually cloud to cloud, we call it. So it can often mean that the storm is maturing or dying out, but that's not going to be the case going into your Friday, at least not in southwest Texas, where we've got the bubble of yellow that was going to include San Antonio, extend to nearly Corpus Christi, damaging winds and large hail, a couple of tornadoes possible. Tomorrow, so people are making their Saturday plans, starting to get into spring feel. At Birmingham down to Montgomery and New Orleans, even eastern Tennessee and western North Carolina, please be on alert because you're not just going to see the potential for those severe storms, but also for flash flooding. And that's why we wanted to bring out the heavy rain forecast, because anywhere from Wichita Falls that already had 2+ inches this week, Dallas just east of there, through southern Arkansas, up to West Virginia, a little touch of northern Virginia, and then mostly Pennsylvania and western New York, going to head up with anywhere from 2 to 4 inches of rain. Kimberly?
Thank you, Ginger. Yeah, the weather is not letting up. All right, guys, we're moving on to the measles outbreak. A Church of Scientology cruise ship was quarantined in St. Lucia after one case of measles was confirmed on board. So I want to go to Victor Oquendo in Miami with more. Victor?
Kimberly, all signs point to that ship heading to its home port on the island of Curacao. The question now is, how will Curacao respond if and when that ship arrives? This morning, after 3 days of quarantine, hundreds of passengers on this cruise ship are now on the move in the Caribbean in the direction of the island of Curacao, the ship's home port, after one confirmed case of measles was found on board. The Free Winds cruise ship docked in St. Lucia on Tuesday and held at port. No one was allowed to disembark.
This decision to quarantine the ship is in keeping with the health laws of St. Lucia.
It's owned by the Church of Scientology and staffed by the church's devout Sea Org members.
This is the Free Winds.
It's billed as a training center away from the crossroads of everyday life and as a place where lives are transformed. The 440-foot vessel even hosting Scientology's most famous member, Tom Cruise, for his 42nd birthday. But for passengers on board, the voyage likely not the type of getaway they had in mind. While docked, St. Lucia's Department of Health and Wellness supplied 100 doses of the measles vaccine as passengers waited out. And for families on dry land here in the U.S., the fear of contamination continues to spread as more than 700 cases of measles are confirmed in 22 states across the U.S.
There's a lot of other things that can come out of measles. You can be deaf, you can have seizures, you can control so much what you're doing. But if other people are going out in public, being sick, then that's part of the problem.
If the ship continues on its current track, it will likely arrive in Curacao at some point Saturday morning. Kimberly?
All right, thank you, Victor. And I want to stay with this story, so I want to bring in Dr. Jen Ashton. Let's say you got vaccinated as a kid. I think this is something that a lot of people are worried about. If you got vaccinated as a kid, do you need another one as an adult right now?
There's so much confusion about this. And I actually was just down at the CDC headquarters, spoke with the CDC director just a few days ago. He laid it all out for me. Okay. And here is the issue. It depends on your birth year. If you were born between 1957 and 1989, you're in this gray zone. Okay, that's when there were a couple of different vaccines out. One was less effective than the other. If you are a high-risk person for getting infected with the measles, you're a healthcare worker, you're immune compromised, or you're traveling or live in one of the outbreak areas, you should definitely talk to your healthcare provider about getting a dose of the current measles vaccine. One dose, 93% effective. 2 doses, 97% effective. And most people our age had to have 2 doses before going to school. So most people are immune for life.
Okay, that's the most definitive information that I've heard so far. I appreciate that because people have been asking about that. Yep. So how do you contain this outbreak? I mean, the cases are rising by the day.
Yep, and they will continue to rise. And I have to say, and I want to be clear with this, and it's not good news, the CDC director told me he will not be surprised if we eventually see a death, because the death rate from measles tends to be 1 to 2 out of every 1,000 cases, and we are approaching 1,000 cases. This is one of the most contagious viruses in the world. And how do you contain an outbreak? You vaccinate the population. The vaccine is safe. The vaccine doesn't kill people. Measles can. Wow. What's dangerous is the measles virus. So that is the key to containing this outbreak.
Yeah, so people have to get those vaccines.
100%.
All right, and if people didn't know, I know you know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And I'm so happy about this because I feel like more and more people are making it a priority. And there's plenty of resources, plenty of outlets, including your new podcast, which is called Life After Suicide. So I want you to tell us about that because it came out on Wednesday.
Yes, it just came out. It's free on Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much for mentioning it. And it is really meant to bring more awareness, more conversation to the survivors whose lives have been affected by suicide. And that is over 6 million people in this country every year who know someone who's died by suicide. It's massive numbers. So our first guest on the podcast is Melissa Rivers, Joan Rivers' daughter. She talks very bravely, really for the first time at this point, about the suicide death of her father when she was just 18 or 19 years old. And it's really stories about healing, stories about inspiration, and it's been an incredible learning experience for me to do it. Totally different from what's in my book, which comes out on Tuesday with the same name, Life After Suicide. That's really my story because my children's father and my ex-husband died by suicide just 2 years ago. Wow. And even as a doctor, I knew people whose lives have been affected by suicide, but I never thought it would hit my family. And unfortunately now we're in the midst of a suicide epidemic. And so our goal really, you know, with the book and the podcast, and I know here at ABC, is to just destigmatize this because 1 in 5 American adults lives with a mental illness. And if we can't talk about it, if we can't say the words, then we can't address it.
One thing I want to ask you while you're here, I keep seeing these statistics, since it is Mental Health Awareness Month, about Black youth, that the numbers for Black youth are rising when it comes to suicides. How do you reach a population that there's a stigma against therapy in this community?
There are issues with access, there are issues with resources, but the stigma against therapy is a big one. And we know that mental illness, there are some disparities by race that are important to address, because we do need to target those vulnerable populations. LGBTQ youth and young adults, very vulnerable for mental illness and suicide. The military, the veterans population, physicians, you know, all of these populations are particularly at risk, but until this becomes something that we can talk about no differently than if you broke your arm or you were living with heart disease, we're not going to make progress in addressing it and preventing it and treating it. So I think that's what this month and the awareness is all about. It's not for the people who are living with mental illness. They already know. They already know. Their awareness is already there. It's for the rest of us, and we need to get up to speed on that.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your work. Everyone can check out the podcast. It's on Apple for free.
For free.
Yes, and you also have a book.
The book, Life After Suicide, is available for pre-order now, and it comes out next week, and we're doing a lot of coverage on it across all the ABC platforms, so people can check it out next week.
Excellent. It's amazing. Thank you. Yes. So, guys, do you have an idea of just how much time you spend on your phone, scrolling, swiping, liking? It's probably more time than you're aware of, and your habits are actually giving out a lot of information. So we want to give you a sneak peek of Diane Sawyer's 2-hour special, Screen Time. Take a look.
The war over human attention is just going to continue to intensify.
And as we're being besieged with those buzzes, notifications, and pings, the experts at Boundless Mind decided to show everyone watching some of the techniques they say are designed to keep us watching those screens. Number 1, is there a reason those pictures, those videos, those posts never seem to stop?
We never get that stopping cue. We never get the signal saying, I've probably been on Twitter long enough now.
By design.
And by design. It's designed to make sure that you never hit the bottom.
Pinterest and Twitter never end.
Like a puppy? Like a million? And the hours go by. And it's been reported how some of the ads have tricks, too.
Somebody will design an ad that looks like there's a fly on your screen or a single piece of hair, and you'll swipe away the piece of hair, but what you're actually doing is interacting with the ad, and you've now earned the advertiser money.
Which brings us to technique number 2. Every second we are on a social media site, we're offering up a kind of open stream of information about our personal behavior, our preferences, our personalities.
I think the other thing is people don't realize how much of themselves they
give away.
Yeah, they give away.
Those algorithms can vacuum up virtually everything we do, including how our finger moves.
Just in the way that you swipe on a screen, you reveal a huge amount about your personality and your current psychological state.
Let's say your finger pauses even a split second over a photo. Maybe the company can send you more like that.
You pause a little too long, you're telling your phone something about what you want.
Pretty fascinating there. Screen Time airs tonight from 8 to 10 p.m. on ABC. All right, guys, grab your kids, grab your wife, get your hat, get your mint julep. It's the Kentucky Derby. It's here. 20 horses are going to be racing this Saturday. So, yeah, that sums up about everything I know about the Derby. So I want to bring in ESPN's Marty Smith to break it down. Marty, how are you doing right now?
Absolutely fantastic. I hope you guys are doing well. We finally it's finally getting dry here. It's been pouring rain all morning, and the skies have finally relented, and we hope it's a little bit drier for the Kentucky Oaks this evening here at Churchill Downs.
Absolutely, and you just mentioned Churchill, so I want to ask you, just remind people why it's so iconic, and if there's any traditions associated with this race that we should know about.
The Kentucky Derby is an American sporting institution that in fact transcends its sport. Just like the Super Bowl does in the NFL, or the Daytona or Indianapolis 500s do in auto racing, the Masters in golf, etc. They are American sporting institutions that you consume even if you aren't an avid fan. That is absolutely the case with the Kentucky Derby, and it's an absolutely wonderful place to be. Certainly, it's a wonderful event to take in, and yes, there are many unique traditions here starting today. The Kentucky Oaks are today, where the Phillies run, and it's a massive breast cancer initiative here. Ladies wear beautiful pink dresses, beautiful pink hats and fascinators. Gentlemen, I'm wearing pink. I have on a pink shirt, pocket square. My shoes are even pink today. So that is a really cool initiative here, and as you noted, mint juleps tomorrow for the Kentucky Derby, gorgeous hats and dresses. Everybody is decked to the nines, and I will tell you that it is a who's who of celebrity every single year here at the Kentucky Derby as well. Just a wonderful day here at Churchill Downs.
That's really cool, and I want to talk about the horses. I don't know much about them, but I was looking at the names. There was a horse named Maximum Security. I saw another horse named Game Winner, and then I saw that something happened with Omaha Beach. Can you explain?
Yep. Yes, Omaha Beach had to scratch. He was the favorite coming in, and his jockey was Mike Smith, who led Justify to the Triple Crown 1 year ago, of course, starting here at Churchill Downs at the Kentucky Derby. And he had to scratch because, I'm not going to get too inside horse racing here, but he had a respiratory condition that eliminated him from the race. And that then really opened up the field. It was already a very open field, and now it's even more so because, A, he was the favorite coming in, and B, as two-time Kentucky Derby winning trainer Todd Pletcher told me here yesterday, everyone expected Omaha Beach to be the pace setter. With Mike Smith on board, they were supposed to start from the 12 hole, and he said they were going to get out and go. We're expecting muddy conditions. That too played into Omaha Beach's favor. So it really did open up the field here for all of you bettors out there. Good luck.
And who do you think is going to win before we go? Who would you bet on, and who should I be betting on?
I'm going Improbable. Morning line, he's a 5-1 right now. And the reason I'm going with Improbable is twofold. A, he finished second to Omaha Beach in the Arkansas Derby, and that was a very muddy race, again, as we're expecting here tomorrow. And I also had the great opportunity to spend 8 or 10 minutes with Bob Baffert this morning. Baffert, of course, a 5-time Derby winning trainer, including Justify last year. And he said that Improbable loves this racetrack. He said that he glides over this racetrack. Some people will tell you that Improbable is Justify Jr. That's extremely high praise, trust me. But I'm going with Improbable. All my chips are going in on Improbable.
And guess what, Marty? All of my chips are going on Improbable because you said it. All right, we appreciate it so much. Have a fantastic time, and take more pictures of your pink shoes. I like that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Guys, and for a little bit more good news, 2 senior high school students in Florida were enjoying their senior skip day, right? They went to the beach with friends, they jumped in the water, but they swam out so far that their friends couldn't see them. So the 2 that were out in the water, they were there for like an hour and a half when finally they saw a boat. And get this, the boat was named Amen. This is an amazing story, and guess what? We have the 2 friends here with us, Heather Brown and Tyler Smith, on FaceTime. Guys, first of all, so happy to see you and just very pleased that you're safe. But I want you to tell us what happened out there and what you were thinking together.
I mean, we just kind of got stuck. Like, we were swimming, just going for a normal swim, and we really didn't think that we were going to get stuck at all, but like, the current just kept taking us, and we didn't really realize it until we were completely off track.
Yeah, you don't think that this stuff will happen to you until it actually happens. You see all these movies, and you don't think that it could be you, but once you're just going for a nice swim across the inlet, you can get sucked out to sea and not even know about it. And obviously, we got the lucky end of it because the grace of God came and saved us with the boat.
Absolutely. I'm just curious, though, how do you stay afloat? Like, were you guys holding each other's hands? How are you staying safe for an hour and a half?
Yeah, so we were basically like treading for the first part of it because we were just trying to swim across. But then when we were getting really tired and knew and finally accepted that we were stuck, we kind of just held on to each other because that's all we could do.
Yeah, we swam as hard as we could in the beginning stages, and once we knew that we were getting nowhere and we were getting basically hopeless, all we knew is that we had each other and that we could get through it or try to get through it if we held hands and stayed together, interlocking hands and just praying to God, really.
Yeah, and then the most miraculous thing, as we've said, the A-Man boat comes. What was the conversation when you finally talked to this guy who saved you guys?
Well, she had the first interaction with him.
Yeah, we got on the boat and we're basically like, I flat out said, God is real. And he said, you want to know the name of our boat? And he goes, the name of our boat is the Amen. And I lost it and I just had to. And they had already put him in one of their cabin beds. So they led me down that hallway so fast and I was like, I got to tell Tyler this. And when I saw him and told him, he didn't believe me at first. But then he was like, that's
it's the true work of God. Like, we both broke down and cried, and we couldn't stop hugging each other after that.
Wow, that's incredible. Guys, again, I'm so happy that you're safe. The prayers were answered. We're just happy that you're smiling and with us today. So I hope you have a really, really good weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Yeah, so there you have it. Guys, continue to take care of yourselves. It's Mental Health Awareness Month. It's Friday. It's the weekend. Make it a priority today. So, and if you're around, you can stick around. We're going to have the briefing room at 3:30 p.m. with updates there. And then you can check out World News Prime at 8 p.m. And if you want to stay updated on all of these headlines, you can go to abcnews.com or download the app. I'm Kimberly Brooks, and I'll see you next week.